All right, it's 10:25, and that's normally when we might start. I see everyone's still shuffling and waving, but can we play the trailer, please? That trailer is invigorating. All right, welcome everyone. I see that we've got a lot of our friends here. That's always nice. My name is V. I'm the Industry Development at Code, but this is not a Code Party political broadcast. Here we have Astronaut Diaries, which is a story about their journey in a delightful fireside format. However, if you did not see the announcement yesterday at the awards ceremony, I'm going to address the obvious Scott-shaped elephant in the room. Scott from Ninja Kiwi, why are you sitting on this stage?
Well, you asked me to. No. Because it's part of the story. Okay, fine. And yes, Ninja Kiwi is the proud publisher of Denari.
That's worth a round of applause right there. I love telling my Australian friends that we have a resident publisher in New Zealand now. Never gets old. All right, so the format of this, I'll ask some questions, we'll get some answers, and the aiming is to really go through what happened with Astronaut Diaries, because that has been a hell of a time. Let's go right back to the start. So, Shrek, would you like to kick off on how did it all even begin?
Oh, okay. So for me personally, I was a trained software engineer, and I had like a 6-year-long career in health IT. And in the meantime, I had dreams of being a guitarist in a death metal band.
I've got the look for that.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess from there it evolved into like this passion for writing music, and I eventually wrote music for my friend's indie game. And at the same time, my career was going really well in the software engineering world, but it's very confusing, I guess, to be in a situation where at one point you have to pick one of your passions or whatever it is, or at least find a way to resolve the two. And of course, I do love video games, and the design and the storytelling of video games always did speak to me, and so I just kind of realized that, wait, can't I just make the video games, and then I get the creative collaboration, and I get the engineering, and I get building things and telling stories, and so I think that was what made me decide I had to dive into video games. And then I kind of foolishly just went straight into indie. I don't know if I necessarily recommend that, but you know, we can get into that. But I at one point quit my job, and I started up Astronaut Diaries. It was just me in my room tinkering away at projects that went really nowhere. Until I sat down and I journaled, what skills do I have, and what genres would I enjoy developing for? And I landed on the kind of like the middle of the Venn diagram being like action adventure. And that would be the start of Denari, and that was like back in 2018, so it was a long time ago. But that's how I landed on something that would complement my skills, and I would also be very passionate about building.
And when did you sync up with Tamihana and the rest of the team? Maybe Tamihana can also answer.
So Isabel, who I was working at Ninja Kiwi with originally, she came to me and said, "Hey, I've got this friend and he's making a game. Are you interested?" And I was like, "Oh, maybe. I'm pretty busy, but I'll check it out." And then she sent me through what the game is. It's like, cool, yeah, I'll have a chat to him. And we got together at a Nando's, and he explained to me this game that's like, it's in like a Coliseum arena, and it'll be different fights every day of this kid who's sort of struggling in the arena, and we'll tell the story in between. So I like hack and slash, and I like narrative games, so this sounds really cool. And just on that sort of like repeat in one arena thing, I was really into it. And then that blew out to a whole, like, there's an island they live on, and there's a guy invading the island, and now we're here. Just very happy to be here.
And while this was all going on, you were working at Ninja Kiwi.
Yeah, sorry, I was working at Ninja Kiwi. That was actually my first and actually only job before Astronaut Diaries in the games industry. And when I was I knew I wanted to do games, but at the time, my impression of the games industry in New Zealand was that it kind of didn't exist, or at least I didn't know how to get into it. So I tried to be a programmer for a little bit and enjoyed it, but wasn't very good at it. But I liked to draw, so I went to animation school. I was like, I'll do ads. I'll animate for ads because I like to animate. What would you call her? Sort of the person who helps with like getting you jobs after you finish school. Animation
Careers
school.
Advisory, kind of, yeah.
That's the word, yeah. She was like, you should check out this place. We sent them your... no, she started with, you should check out this place. I was like, okay. I checked them out. It was all the way out in Kumi, and I was like, I don't... It's kind of far away, and I'm in the city. But then she just sent them my reel, and then messaged back to me. It's like, they really want to talk to you. You should apply. I was like, okay, I'll go out there. Met with Scott and Chris and Stephen, and we just chatted about things. I think like maybe 10 minutes of the conversation was like, this is the job, and then it was just like rambling about animation and what I wanted to do in games. It was just chill. I was working at a call center, and I think the day I went to the interview, I knew I don't want to work at the call center, so either I get this job or I leave, and then I need to figure it out because I don't want to work here anymore. So I resigned the day I went to the interview, and I think it was like the last day when they said that, well, we'll get back to you around this time. I was like going to work, I was like, I don't think I got it. I was about to walk out the door, I checked my emails, I was like, you got the job? I was like, yes! That was my first into the industry, and I loved working there so much that it was my only one, and then we've been published by them, so I'm sort of still there. Yeah.
Which leads me to the next question. Scott, you've got this employee, and sooner or later, of course, Tamihana was working for you at the time, and this is a thing that I think a lot of bigger companies with employees, of course, have to grapple with, is that sometimes their employees have their own creative ambitions as well, which don't necessarily align with what the company is doing just at that moment. How did you cope with that? Because I think this is a challenge and certainly when we started Code, the first thing that I was told was, so you're going to nick all our staff then? That's not the plan. But anyway,
yeah, American by birth, but Kiwi by choice. So I spent, almost 20 years in the U.S. Games industry. I studied to be a teacher, and I did that because I wanted to be a writer with those months off. But my first writing job was at the 3DO company, which nobody even knows about anymore.
I do. I'm old too.
But anyway, and so then I was in Games for Life, which was fantastic because really that's where I wanted to be. But it made me conscious of the fact that I was writing things in my spare time, and my employment agreement says that basically anything that comes out of my brain is owned by the company that I work for, and that wasn't right. And so then what people do, you lie and you keep it secret and you skate around these things because that's what humans are going to do, right? Lawyers don't actually make us do anything. Anyway, at Ninja Kiwi, that's just fundamentally wrong, and so it was never a thing for Ninja Kiwi. I think in general in New Zealand, employment agreements are pretty good about this, but be careful. Anybody who's out there, make sure that you own your brain. Anyway, for Ninja Kiwi, it was always whatever you wanted to work on in your spare time that you loved and you were passionate about is fantastic. It's good for you, and it's good for Ninja Kiwi. Like anything.
It really is, because I mean, what you're doing is your employees are upskilling themselves in their spare time.
And doing something that they love. They wouldn't be doing it. So that kind of, it's like, I don't know, I'm reading a book about rest and wakefulness and all this stuff right now, and it's like what you do to be your best person is very different. And anyway, the point is, we never owned Tamihana's brain. We knew, and Tamihana was very open about this. And Izzy was doing this too. We were like, we're moonlighting. We're working super hard. And 2018 was the launch of BTD6. So Tamihana had been all the way from BTD5 into BTD6, and was doing amazing work. But he wanted to do more. And so, what do? Do you let that get in the way, or do you encourage it and make it happen? So when Tamihana got to the point, like we talked about this for like 2-3 years, I think I need to work on Denari full time. I think I need to work on Denari full time. And so how could we sort of let that happen as naturally as possible? And that kind of goes into the next bit.
All right. So then Denari. For anyone who doesn't know the game, what's the elevator pitch?
Here goes. Via's made me practice this many, many times. So Denari is a single-player narrative action game. It's about this boy with telekinetic abilities who has to fight to save his people from the invasion of an empire. Mechanically, it takes the sort of hack and slash genre, the isometric hack and slash genre, and it twists it with the power of telekinesis. So if someone, say, throws a grenade at you, you can catch it and throw it right back. You can push enemies into one another and into stuff in the environment. And what that does is that it turns the enemies on the battlefield into resources that you can use in combat, thereby creating this tension between, the different scenarios that you're in, and forces the player to have to adapt to them. And yeah, story-wise, it's this story about this kid who has to save his people from, an external invading force, which is always fun and exciting, revenge quest or whatever. But thematically, we like to put a lot of our own cultures and our backgrounds into it. And you'll see a lot of that in the artwork. Even the design of the weapons and everything are influenced by Maori bone carvings, for instance. And in the clothing, you'll see, saris and whatnot, influences from Indian and Southeast Asian culture. So yeah. As a whole, that's what Denari is all about.
And then one day you started showing up to places and getting people to play the game. And what was that like? TG's he's laughing right now, so I'd like your opinion, Tamihana, on what that felt like.
Yeah, I think Shrek might be the best one to start talking about it, but I can...
Okay, sure.
Okay, so... Expos and the role of expos. So there's this term that gets floated around, which this phrase, which is that games are played, not made. I really like that because it sort of speaks to the idea that there is no game design without play testing, right? It's a fundamental part of that loop, and if you skip that out, I don't know what maybe you're game designing for yourself or something. It has to be play tested. There has to be that feedback loop, and so. We almost kind of became a meme, I think, in the New Zealand gaming community. It's like, oh, this game again for the 600th time, because we just turned up at every single expo, and at every single one we'd come away with pages of notes. And we're talking about Armageddon 2019, 2018, as many Auckland meetups as we could go to. And I think the role, at least, of the expos initially was to get that gauge, get that feedback, search for patterns, not necessarily individual pieces of feedback, but like patterns and, everyone seems to be struggling with that same parry for the same reason. That's a pattern, address patterns, and the feedback from the audience, or the general vibe from the audience, would start off with, if you're first starting off and it's terrible, the reaction you get is like, cool, good job, bro. And then they walk off awkwardly, right? And that evolves into actually like a frustration where the players are sitting there and be like, oh, they're annoyed, and they're not leaving. You know, they're sitting there with it and they're annoyed because there's something there and they want more from the experience, but you're not quite giving it to them, and that's what you're trying to sort of discern. And by the time we'd been working with Code sent us to Gamescom and things like that, eventually the experience that we were getting at that point was people would sit down for 20 minutes, lock in, silence. They're not saying anything. They get up, they turn around and be like, that was sick. You know? So that's the kind of the sort of journey that Expos took on, just from the game design perspective.
What did that feel like when people first started vibing with it?
Oh, yeah. Pretty incredible, yeah. Yeah. Should I, TG?
Yeah. I think one of the things for me is like the visual evolution, or like the visual choices we made and then decided to change. I think early on there was like a lot of confusion. We had a sort of green sand period where I was like, oh, it'll be an alien planet. Everything's very like strange looking, but it's just you can have like aspects of that, but I think it was just too alien, and you need some kind of familiarity so people know where they're at, like establish the environment that they can, so they know where they're at, basically. And just sort of like each time we took it out, it would be like sort of like confused faces, and like, I think I get it, to more recently now it's just that people fire it up and they'll get to one particular part of the game and it's just like eyes light up and like, yes.
And then you went on a journey, and I can remember you applied through New Zealand Film Commission. How was that experience? Back when they had their first fund, it was the first national real, like it wasn't a huge fund, it was something. And you applied there a couple of times. How did that go?
Yeah, so in the kind of 2018 to the pre-code, the dark ages, there was about 2-3 things that you could apply for. There was Kiwi GameStar, and there was that New Zealand Film Commission grant, and we did that thing, which was like, you know, like go all out, like, you know, apply for every single one because this is the only thing we have, and, you know, give it your all. And we got rejected 3 times by Kiwi GameStar and 3 times by NZ Film, and each time I think, like, we typically found that NZ Film came back with really, really good actionable feedback, and we're like, this is interesting. Like they were like, we can't tell you who our assessors are, right? But they know what they're talking about, and they would always come back with like really good feedback. And the third time we were rejected again, but we were like, this is the best feedback we've ever gotten. And like, I don't know who it is that's giving this to us, but they really know what they're doing, you know.
Yeah, sorry, man.
Yeah, so I think I mean, just to describe the overall experience of getting constantly rejected by every opportunity that was perceived to be available for a very long time. It was weird because externally we were getting bounced back constantly, but internally within the team we were more and more passionate about the thing that we were making. It was really weird and polarizing. And yeah, it did start to make us feel as though we were maybe going a bit insane, or we were missing just that little bit of perspective, a little bit of that could take us from we're almost there to we're there.
All right, this is a slightly sensitive topic, given in the light of a LinkedIn post quite recently. But you pitched to a VC at some point, and would you like to talk about what that looked like?
Oh, yeah, sure. So I'm going to say on the back of COVID, at that time it seemed like the only thing that was making any money at all was games and online businesses in general. And so the entire venture capital ecosystem seemed to be like, oh, games, oh, look, that's where all the money is. Let's throw money at it. And so there was a trend of a lot of studios getting a lot of a lot of funding opportunities turning up for studios at the time, and that was really exciting. And yeah, the encounter that we had with it was going into pitch, and it was odd because, and I don't know if this is just how the venture capital world works in general, but like you would have on the face of it, like, we're really excited to work with you, but then when you would sit down and talk with someone that was more sort of due diligence minded, they'd be like, I'm not really feeling this. And so there was this, it was really weird and polarizing. And this is a conversation that occurred over like 4 months. They were like, we totally want to work with you. And then someone internally to them were like, no, I'm not feeling this. And so you're like, but you totally want to work with us, right? And it was unclear and indirect and not very specific as to what we were doing right or wrong. And so for that reason, it was just very frustrating. And by the end of this very long 4-month due diligence process, it was like, no. So that sums up my experience with the VC world. However, I'll say another VC that I pitched to was nice enough to sit me down, have a coffee with me, and be like, no, on day one. And the reasoning was very clear. Like, I just don't work with first-time teams. That's cool. You seem cool. I love what you're up to. But please go do a release. And that's just my way of managing my risk to ensure that you've been through the entire process end to end. And I thought that was really respectful of my time and my energy. And this person, I still go to them for advice and whatnot. And I'd be happy to talk to them in future. But that I guess it was a mixed bag. Our journey with VCs. Yeah.
And I guess, Tamihana, what's it like to have stamina on the creative side, all while Shrikkanth is relentlessly applying for things and just holding that all together? I think that's one of the themes of this chat today is around the stamina that you guys all took to hold it together. What did that feel like?
It had its days. We were like, what am I doing? And what are we doing? And am I doing enough to help everybody? That's sort of what it always boils down to whenever because you still have the days where like, this is really hard and I love working on this, but I don't know when to stop working on it. But you remember that the people you're with really care about the project, and you really care about the people, which was something I got from being at Ninja Kiwi as well. It's the same thing. Everybody really cares about the project and each other. So that sort of keeps you going. You don't want to let them down, and it's in kind, so you carry on. And I do really care about Denari. It's hard, but it's not impossible, I guess. Yeah, there's always a way we can keep going.
And Scott, you're watching all of this going on, sitting over the Baxt, and how did, in your experience, and of course you've been through all this, you know what this looks like, but I've heard it described as the long march of game development. And did you want to step in and give advice, or did you want to mentor, or what did you feel like with your role watching on in all of this?
I think Tamihana said it very well. It really is just about the care, commitment, and connection. This was watching Tamihana and Izzy and what they were going through. And because we're a really close team, we'd talk about these things. And so we'd sit down at lunch and we're like, oh, yeah, well, I was working on this. And talking about the VC stuff, we were already talking. So Tamihana had put Shrek and I in touch, and we were talking. And it was like that is an opportunity. Like, you should go for everything. It was the same kind of thing. It's like, do everything you possibly can, go through it, and then if you still want, whether it's just help or advice or part-time QA or whatever it is, it's like, if Ninja Kiwi can help, we'll help. And that was sort of a commitment before there was a publishing agreement. It was just like, we're going to make this happen. The first thing, really, that I guess we just Tamihana had been trying to quit for about 2 years. And we finally, after all this time, we're like, dude, it's okay. You can, because, again, he cared so much about what we'd built at Ninja Kiwi as well. So it was like, so he's definitely in this arms outstretched, getting yanked on both sides. But it was not really his arms, it really was his heart. And it was like, we can tell. So it was kind of the enabling thing, is like, it's okay, you want to break up with us, it's okay, it's okay,
But not really.
But no, really. And really, it was.
And we'll fast forward to 2023, and of course we get a wonderful phone call on a Saturday morning from our then minister saying, oh, by the way, you're going national next week. Thanks, Dave. Prep time was great, and so the first thing that we thought we could do was opening up a travel grant round targeting Gamescom. That was where the timing really sat, and it was before we'd hired Anthony in Auckland, and the Navy in Wellington, and so we're going to go to we're really going out for our first post-pandemic Gamescom, and you got a bunch of you got one of those grants. And so had you been to an international event before, and what was your strategy coming in to what is the biggest content market for games on Earth?
So had I been before? This guy called Kenny Roy, animator, used to work at Weta. Him and I linked up, did a Game Jam game, took the Game Jam game, submitted it to PAX in Australia, and they were like, "Sure, you can exhibit," and we were like, "Okay," and we turned up, and so that was our first experience of it. And I wouldn't say we were particularly prepared. I didn't really know what the pitch was. It was like Super Smash Brothers with mice, and this time with the help of code, this was, to put it into context, this was the first time anyone had believed in us and decided to back us, right? And to send us over to Gamescom. So the level of responsibility, it's like, yeah, cool, we feel good. And it's like, all right, get to work, So we took every opportunity to prepare ourselves.
You did the pitch workshop with John.
It was a John Cut, yeah. If you have the opportunity to do that, please do. It's incredible. And it's John and V roasting your pitch for 20 minutes and then getting you to do it again a few days from then. Brilliant. We did that, and as well as that, in preparation for Gamescom. Now, for some context, Gamescom is about 400,000 people attending this event, and 3 of these large sections are put aside just for business, and every publisher on Earth is there. You're able to use this platform Meet to Match to go and set up meetings. And so 2 months in advance, I'd gotten every, a little 45-second intro video, a template for email for messages that I could send to each publisher. I came up with a spreadsheet of every publisher that we might be interested in, and wrote a specific message to each of them. I sent maybe 50 messages out and got 11 meetings, which is that's a reasonable amount, 11 meetings. But yeah, I think for me that it was the level of responsibility that I felt towards code and towards my team, but particularly towards code, because I'm like, I do not want to let them down. Yeah.
This isn't a party for
I know, no. I know this is not a code propaganda meeting. No, but that's genuinely how I felt. This was on the back of that whole VC situation, and and everything. It was just rejection. They were like, go to Germany. We're like, oh god, okay, all right, we got this, So, and Gamescom was intense but incredibly productive, and to be in contact, I think, with the first meeting reply that we got back, saying yes, we'll meet with you, was from Square Enix Collective. And when I saw that green tick with Square Enix Collective, I damn near cried. Like when I was 9 years old, I was playing Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI, and that's why I'm here, And to get that meeting invite, being like, yeah, we'll meet with you, I was like, okay, finally, we're getting somewhere. Yeah, that's what that felt like.
Intimidating?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And you went through, you got the prep, so you've gone to Gamescom, you've gone to experience that. And then there was a small matter of a funding application that happened a bit after that as well. And now you've come off the back of multiple rejections. You're asking for $150,000. We roasted your pitch. Heading into that, and I'm keen for again, Scott, you were watching on while they were doing this. Tamihana, you were obviously involved in trying and holding team together as well. What was the vibe, guys?
Oh. Cool. Okay, so Gamescom was August. V invited us to participate in the Code/NZT PAX showing, and that was sort of early October. A week and a half maybe after we had returned was the deadline for this startup grant, and because I think we were just trying to pull out every stop we could. We also attended an Armageddon right after because we were like, oh, we need to test this new mechanic because that's the reason.
Do you
totally.
like pain? What is?
But so it was pretty intense. But what was really cool about that whole thing was that we went to Gamescom. We were talking to publishers, right? And what excited me about talking to these publishers was that it sounds silly, but like they really actually cared about games. They really knew games. It sounds weird to say, you know, like because they're like, oh, business people, what do they know, you know? But sometimes, you know, like for some of these these publishers, many of whom rejected us, right? Our game would go into an internal team that would assess it. Part of that internal team would often be a creative director of games that I won't say, but you've heard of and you know. And that creative director would write back an email that said, here's what I love about your game, and here's what I don't. And this was across, you know, sort of like, 10 data points of like, you know, people coming back with feedback. And some of the we outright disagreed with, which is like, you should make your game a roguelike. And we were like, no. And then the other half were like, okay, sort of across the board, everyone really liked Denari's combat. But then there was this piece of the game loop which was kind of missing, which was like this narrative world-building piece. They were like, it's in your pitch deck, it's not in your demo. And we're like, that's good feedback. That plus the experience of PAX, where we're in touch with consumers and media, and we're getting featured on articles and whatnot, and cool developers are like tweeting about us and stuff. All of that put together was what made the case for our startup grant. It's almost like we didn't make the case ourselves. You know, it was like the feedback that we received.
Is that validation?
Yeah, it's that we could make a case that was like, okay, ignore. We literally said a bunch of publishers wanted us to make something we didn't want to make. We're going to ignore them. We're going to take the bit the way they were nice about our combat because thank you. And there's this other section, this cohort of them that say, do the thing you set out to do. It's good, but I want to see more of that entire game loop expressed, right? And so we made this case to code that was like, hey, help us do this, right? Help us fill out those gaps in the identity of our demo and identity of our product. Help us develop the skill set and hire. We ended up hiring Rachel here, who's a phenomenal animator and a cutscene animator, to help us bring that aspect of our story of our game to life, so that we can then go and take that and pitch that to publishers as here's the fully realized identity in a 15-minute demo.
So you've just been, and then of course you got the grant. You got the magic phone call, which is, and that phone call for a code employee is pretty much the best day. Is when you get to make those phone calls and go, and then you do a little happy dance on the phone with the person because they're so excited and all that. And then things got really serious. And then some of those publishers started responding, and all that. And then there was a Ninja Kiwi sitting over the shoulder as well. And I think we were at BitSummit in 2024, and you were you're still discussing and all that. And I mean, ultimately, the deal got signed. And what was that like for you, Scott?
It was just a precious moment because we had been like talking for 2 years, not about publishing, but about help in the sense of how can we do this together? Is there anything that you can that Ninja Kiwi can help with? And it was kind of like we were just talking, and Square Enix was a big moment because it was like, dude, if you score that, go for it. It's like there's like, don't even think about working with Ninja Kiwi. Like that would be it. Now, I'm not saying that would be no bed of roses, and there's still a chance that you wouldn't make it to the finish line because, like, anyway, AAA publishing is a whole nother thing. But it's an opportunity, right? And it's an opportunity that Ninja Kiwi can't provide. And there's still the things that have the glitz, Hollywood, AAA publishing, all the money, all the stuff. Like there is just something that's captivating about that. But secretly I was hoping it wouldn't happen, and that because I've seen it, and it's not a particularly pretty picture, and I don't think that your DNA would do well with that. I think you ended up right where you should be. And then the code piece was also really interesting because we were talking about, well, what would that mean? 150K, that gets us almost there. Literally, we were talking about your budget and the runway, and what would 150K give? That almost gets us to a finished game. But maybe not quite. It's like, so well, how would that change the business terms or whatever? It's like, well, like it shouldn't really change the business terms. So how about if we set something up so that if you get that money, it's good, and if you don't get that money, it'll still work, and we'll still make this happen. So that was good, and then it got into those, I guess, the real business terms, and I think it's good to talk about the conditions around that. Don't let anybody take your IP. If a publisher asks to own or severely encumber your IP, please don't sign that agreement. Find somebody else who will let you build the business and IP that you want to. That's why you started that out. If it's the only deal you can sign, then that's a soul-searching discussion that you should have. But if you have any option to hold on to your IP, do that. Most publishers won't say that, but that's the way it should be.
We're going to open up for questions shortly, but before we do that, all right, just the final question from me. We're staring down the barrel of launch. That's a few months away. That's not for me to announce. That's for you to call the time on. You have plans for the franchise and for the future, and the world and the stories and the themes. Oh gosh, yeah, I can see the energy going on. But what is that even for the first time with your team and this massive journey you've been on? But and very open-ended. Again, what does that feel like? What's the vibe? How are you feeling? You're this close to the finish line.
I'll start. I'm really excited to get it out. In our milestone meetings, there's often things that we aren't saying explicitly to Scott or Ninja Kiwi in meetings, but they're like narrative-wise, they're picking up, like, okay, we're doing it right, and it's making sense. And then they're looking a little bit further than the game is even really saying just yet, and they're getting it. Like, yes, okay, cool. So I'm really excited to get it out. Not just because, like, yes, we finished it. We've been working on it for so long. I still love it, but like a finish line would be great. But just to see what people get from the narrative that we're trying to say, but sort of like quietly hiding, because people already picked it up. So I'm really keen for that.
I think there's an audience, and they're picking up what you're putting down, and that's really, as an observer, it's just really amazing to watch.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So I guess I'll speak to what Denari is as hopefully an IP that might grow from here. It's the name Denari. I stole it from the denarius, the currency. I thought, what would be a good name for an empire, like evil empire? And Denari came to mind, and so I was like, cool, that's the name of the empire. I thought everyone who had my upbringing wants to make a Final Fantasy game. I certainly would. And, you know, typically the stakes of a Final Fantasy game are like, okay, cool, you start off killing some rats in a basement, and at the end of the game, you're killing fate itself. And it's like, you know, it's like a very, you know, it's very world-ending stakes, and with that comes a scope and an ambition that we would like to get to one day, or perhaps we can chip away at that. And I think the idea of the Denari franchise will, rather than to be like this like big expansive thing, is to zoom in on the slow collapse of an empire. And
well, we're watching that in real time right now.
I think we're always watching it throughout history, right? Like, and I think if you read a lot of history books, like some of the history books that would have inspired me, like, you know, Guns, Germs, and Steel and Sapiens, to me, it's quite exciting to zoom right into those moments where you start to see the decline. And in this case, it's this empire that's learned to wield magic or magitech, and they're now attempting to take over this little peninsular nation. And spoiler alert, they fail, or on some level they fail. And for that to be like the first sign of trouble for the collapse of this empire, and from there we can zoom into other moments in the history of its decline. And I guess we have sort of like a magic system and a lore for the Empire that will hopefully allow us to sort of like jump around throughout the sequels of Denari and zoom in on further of those stories. But yeah,
Just said sequels.
oh,
How's your checkbook, Scott?
We're good.
Very good. I think we might open up for audience questions now. So just a little bit on how we're going to do it. I'll come running out to you. I'm mathematic, so like just bear with me. Please, if you're going to direct a question, probably start with one of our panelists. And then that's a starting point, and then I'll make my way around. And hopefully not trip over. Nope, still alive.
Hey, I just wishlisted, and my question is, can you just talk about the navigating the Steam ecosystem, like, metrics like wish lists and all that sort of stuff?
Scott, do you maybe want to do that one?
Sure. Yes, I mean, like, all of that is incredibly important, but I guess from our perspective, we don't start thinking about that until we feel like we've got the right, the right message and plan. Wish listing has been a huge driver of BTD6's support, so we've got a really good lens on how that works, but it's also changed fairly fundamentally in the last few years. The sort of, there was I guess it was fairly normal for like through the 2010s, and then, but COVID has disrupted that. So wild swings of wish lists during that period. But since then, the ability to get wish lists is different. I think this is really just. Wishlist is a symptom of what's happening in the industry overall. There's just a lot of competition for time, and especially if you've got a game that appeals to a younger audience, you're fighting against all of social media in a way that is fundamentally different than you were fighting against social media 15, 12 years ago. But it's structure. You have to use all of Steam's tools. You have to get announcements, trailers, frequent points, and you have to drive them to wish list, incentivize to wish list. Think about the kinds of things you can do for an audience to make sure that your day one is as big as possible. I hope that addresses the question somewhat.
Next question. I'll run over there first, and then I'll come visit you. And please nominate who you'd like to answer the question first.
My question is for Tamihana, and it would be, I'm curious, during development, if you ever reached a moment where you kind of felt like you finally achieved like the vision of Denari, because I know you've kind of had like quite a long development period, and I was just wondering if you kind of, felt like you finally reached your vision and your goal. Thank you.
I'm very pedantic about everything and very especially my artwork, so I hope one day, but I feel like the healthy way for me to think about it is like on a project by project basis. So there will be a point where I feel like Denari is very good, but it might not be exactly what I want that day, and it'll probably change a month from then and in a year from then, but that's what the next game is for. There is sort of like, I make it collective because I'm so pedantic, and when everybody is like, this is really good, like we've got it, that's the marker. It's hard to say, but I hope so.
This one's for Shri. Obviously, you started getting into sort of game because of the fact that you started writing for music and stuff like that. How did you find swapping from doing like music and stuff like that to writing dialogue, script, overarching stories? How did you find that transition? Did you find anything that was helpful for making that transition?
Okay. So kind of like what's it like to move from one art form to another. I think just to speak to writing dialogue and story and whatnot. I think, unfortunately, the first anything that you write is going to sound really good in your head, but then when you put it down and then you sleep on it and you look at it, you're like, oh God, what was I thinking? Oh Lord, oh no. And so what I did to handle that was to just aggressively seek out wisdom from whoever else. I did Aaron Sorkin's masterclass online. I went through YouTube channels like Overly Sarcastic Productions and studied tropes. I mean, studied as much as you could on YouTube. And then I started to apply that lens to media that I was consuming as well. Watching through Breaking Bad and being like, okay, cool, what's the story structure of this? This is a tragedy. And what are the moments where, you can see a character winning while they're losing, et cetera, in the structure of a tragedy. I started to, as I was, I think I adopted a framework that I think gives me structure as a new writer. You'll hear things like, okay, heroes' journeys, but you'll also hear of the Japanese poem format, Kisho Tenketsu, so like a introduction, a setup, a twist, and a resolve. And all of our combat encounters and all of our story moments are all follow that pattern. Right, and that gives me a structure to work within. So I think finding the sort of like walls within that you can work within safely was an important sort of starting point for me to start becoming a decent writer. And then there's just that idea that I said that like anything that you put out is going to be like rubbish. That's true today as it was, as true today as it was 3 years ago. And so I kind of have this acceptance that anything that I write, I'll have to write 5 times, right? I'll write it 5 times, review it with the team, and they'll be, I don't know about if I like this or this or this. And then I'll write it again, and then we'll send it off to, we're working with a narrative designer. His name's Cam Rogers. He worked on Warframe for about 7 years. And we convinced him to come along and help us and review our dialogue and things like that. And he'll come at it from the lens of, well, he's worked on story-driven action games before, and like, does this suit the genre? And will a player understand this? Not just on a screenplay, right? But he has that kind of perspective of having put all of this into a game. So I'd say the best answer I can give is as much academic groundwork as I can muster. An assumption of total failure in any first pass, and to accept that there are going to be multiple passes, and then to get active mentorship as well.
All right, we've got time for one more question.
That was lucky. Thank you. You've mentioned team at this point. How big is the team as you're getting this close to launch? And how does that growth feel?
Okay, so the team when we were bootstrapping was just myself full time, and with all of the stresses of having zero funding, and the team part time as well. At the end of their day, whatever time and energy they'd have, they would gift it to this project. And for us to have 3 people full time, it's myself, Tamihana, and Rachel here, working on the core content, is incredible. We meet every morning, and we review each other's work. And the team is small enough that there can be that kind of level of ownership that each of us sort of desire. We don't, perhaps if you were embedded into a much, much larger team, you would maybe have a lot less creative agency. But each of us, in that kind of small team, we have a lot of creative agency. And so I think, it feels incredible to be working. I think, it's not so much that the team size has changed so much. Isabel works part-time, David works part-time. But I think that we have the resources and the time and the freedom to work on this project. I think that's the thing that feels so liberating. Do you want to get TG to add to this?
Meng John also works part-time with us too. Yeah. I don't think I have too much to add to it. The team size is good for what the scope and scale of what we're trying to make. With creative agency comes creative responsibility as well.
Are you Spider-Man?
I didn't even put that together. So you do have a lot of creative input on things, But if you feel like something you've come up with isn't working, or that maybe you're not vibing with something somebody else has come up with, it's sort of your responsibility. I guess that's a really harsh word for it, but we collaborate together to sort of, everything you put into it sort of feeds into the right vision we have together overall.
And with that, we're almost on time, Scott.
I know, but I think 3 is the magic number. So I think psychologically, having Tamihana full-time was a massive change, right? I mean, just having somebody else to rely on a full-time basis and then again, to have Rachel come on board, and then that gives you a third voice, which means that you're never just offsides with somebody when you have a creative break, and you can't, then you always need a third party to break a loggerhead. So it's a beautiful number, and I highly encourage it in your creative process, whether you can do that full-time or otherwise. It's a really, really, really solid process. It's a reason why it's fundamental in nature and social organizations.
And with that, we're on time. Whānau in the room, one of the most exciting teams, games, collaborations and relationships in Aotearoa, New Zealand right now. Let's give it up.